23rd of March 2020, the UK entered lockdown and our theatres went dark. Productions were cancelled, some were postponed until the time when they can once again open their doors to the public. Now some theatres have been closed for good, with many others surviving from donations from their members and audiences and finding a temporary home online with virtual shows and classes and whatnot. August has finally seen some theatres being able to open again, of course with social distance casts, crews and audiences. Unfortunately, normal has still not returned to our small or big theatres. Some never to return to normal again. Normal? Normal? I'll tell you what's not normal. There's no pantomimes anywhere this year. Just think of all those poor boys and girls going without. It's really, really sad. Oh, come on, it's much worse than that. Well, it's worse than that as well. That's better. Here are some stories from local Lancashire amateur cast and crew who have been affected by the pandemic.
Usually at the theatre I'm involved with anything from backstage, helping with the lighting, and recently directing as well. So my first directing debut at the theatre I work with was due to be this summer. So we just began rehearsals when coronavirus sent the UK on lockdown and the show has now been completely cancelled. I think frustration is the biggest emotion with shows being cancelled because the work has been going on for so much longer than January. A lot of people see that rehearsals began in January, we got to February, beginning of March, and it was cancelled. We barely got going. But for me, I'd applied to direct the show 18 months prior, and that had been a big build-up of research, of planning creative ideas, taking that to a team, getting their feedback, going back again, creating budget lists, planning where costumes would come from. Then you have the whole casting process, and then you have to choreograph and begin to have director's notes before you even start the rehearsals. And then yes, rehearsals were maybe 6 weeks in, but really there's a whole giant load of work that went on beforehand.
So I'm mainly, I do acting. Really, I've done pretty much anything you could probably do in a theatre at this moment in time. I've probably done at one point or another. I moved to Liverpool last year to start my degree in acting at university, and we were on to our final show actually, and we were probably about halfway through rehearsals, maybe a bit towards the end, about to do the performance, and pandemic hit, and obviously everything got shut down. I had to move back home, and we then had to carry on as we were and actually do the performance from home, which was a strange kind of thing really. So we were originally going to do it all on Zoom. Everything was going to be recorded and we're all going to literally perform in front of a camera on Zoom and see how that went and do it in full costume and everything like that. But we decided that would probably be a really weird thing to do because it wouldn't exactly work. So we decided then we'll do it as an audio drama, which was fun for us. I mean, I've always loved to do audio. I'm very much an audio kind of guy. That's kind of something I want to do in the future, is get into sort of voice acting work for cartoons and things like that. I've always been that kind of person who's liked that sort of stuff.
I usually do publicity for St Ambrose players. I also act and direct when I get the opportunity. So it's been very, very quiet this year ever since the pandemic happened for me. Well, I was lucky, I was doing publicity for Sister Act, but we'd been rehearsing for a few weeks intensely sort of for it, and then it all happened quite quickly. So luckily I wasn't involved in the sense of being on stage or that kind of an upset, but in terms of the publicity being ready for it, I was definitely done the poster, I was making a start on the programmes. It was very strange to be involved in those decisions and the panic that happened, I think, as soon as we knew that lockdown was a strong possibility.
At the theatre I am predominantly, well, so far pretty much entirely an actor. I've had opportunity to be involved in backstage stuff, light, sound. I've done props on one or two things, but generally just on stage performing. When the pandemic first hit, which was sort of mid to end of March, I'd finished a show in January and then had a break and then was just about to go into one at Blackburn, Death of a Salesman, but I'd also done auditions for several. So basically I've got still 4 shows in the pipeline, but when they're on, no idea. The 4 shows are at 3 different theatres, The one I was already in at Blackburn, which was due to be on end of May, early June, but obviously as everything got put back, then Rosendale and Somerset had their auditions for the following season, so all the auditions are done one after the other, sort of week after week, so that you can get an idea of what you're doing over the next year. So I'd been cast in 3 other plays, which were all at different times of year. But now with the lockdown and not knowing when everything's going to be on, I don't know whether they're going to clash, whether I'll be able to do all 4, whether it'll be 1 or 2 or 3. We'll see as things open back up and as things get back to normality, whatever that is.
I'm a stage manager. I do costumes, I prompt, I crew, I house manage. I'm a theatrical chaperone. The only things I don't really do are box office and bar work, because I can't add them. I just, actually, when all this started, I just finished a show, which was a lot of fun. It's The Lady Vanishes. And I was under rehearsal for one called Curtain Up, where I had to play Liza Minnelli, which was going to be fun. And I had to tap dance, which was also going to be fun. I was also due to crew a show, and that was the actual week of lockdown.
I'm mainly an actor, but I mean, I do other things as well. I've got a bit of a technical background. I was really lucky because the show that I was just doing had literally just finished. Then it was probably about a week or so until like the whole lockdown sort of kind of happened. I was doing Of Mice and Men at Adlington, and I was playing Lenny. It was a magnificent experience, but I'm so blessed and so lucky that we've actually managed to complete the show. And unfortunately, some people have not been so lucky, and some shows have been postponed or they've been completely cancelled altogether.
So at the theatre, I'm an actor. I've never done anything else other than acting. I can't see myself as crew. I don't think I'd be very good at it, to be fair. So when the pandemic hit, we were doing Sister Act, which I was cast in, but I had to drop out because I had an injury and I couldn't dance. But we had just finished The Lady Vanishes.
It may seem quite obvious, but the biggest aspect of theatre I miss is just the live aspect. I think with all of this time at home and off work, we have intaken so many books and so many TV series and films and everything we can get our hands on to keep us entertained, but there's nothing like being live in a room and seeing someone recreate a life story or an emotion or even just something silly and funny, but literally right there in front of you. You could almost touch them if you wanted, and I think that bringing together of people and that very natural and vulnerable storytelling is something that we're not going to have unless it can be live. For me, I have a lot of internal struggles with anxiety and with the way that I put myself forward to the world. So theatre has often been an escape of, I can be whoever I want to be today and I can be someone else tomorrow. So mentally, it's been nice to sit at home and have space to be me, but there's a point where I have lost confidence in starting to go back to work and starting to go back to the world, because my main hobby is theatre, and in that I have the flexibility to appear different on different days, and that's very comfortable for someone that has struggles with mental health and anxiety. But now I'm looking at going back to work after 6 months off, and I have to just be me, and there's no other escape right now.
As someone whose mental health over the years has deteriorated a lot, and theatre was always a way of my escape in a way, that I always was able to use theatre and acting as a way of not being me for however long, and being somebody completely different and creating this character and being someone who's so more extravagant and exceptional than me. And so that was always kind of something that was great for me. And so when obviously the pandemic hit and I couldn't do that then, and then I was just stuck for months on end. And it's all well and good being able to do a monologue in front of a camera, but it's not the same as it's being able to properly get your teeth into a performance and be able to completely change who you are in a way. So it really did kind of affect my mental health. Nobody really sees that kind of thing of how much theatre can help people with mental health.
I miss seeing friends. I think there's a social aspect definitely for us. I miss being in things. I love it when I get to act in any way, shape or form. But I was supposed to direct as well, and I'm missing that definitely, because this summer would have been me doing a play that I was really looking forward to doing. I think it's definitely affected my life, because I think you don't realise how much, when you love theatre, how much time you spend thinking about it, going to see it. There was a show I was due to go and see this August. In fact, I was going to go see Whoopi Goldberg in Sister Act this August, last weekend it would have been, and obviously that was cancelled, postponed. There were so many things that I was planning to do that got completely changed, and I think as much as lockdown had like a two-side effect for me, it was nice to take it a little bit slower, and to appreciate being at home and reading books and doing the stuff that I don't normally get the chance to do, but at the same time the social aspect as well of going out to watch theatre, of going down to rehearsals. I love being in a show, even though it gets stressful sometimes, but I also love it when I'm not in a show, getting to go down and just say hi to people and watch rehearsals and maybe take a few photos and just be involved from the sidelines when I get the chance.
I think for me, it's especially, this is going to sound really like big-headed and arrogant of me, but it's just doing it in front of an audience and kind of feeling that love back from an audience of, that's how you know you're doing well. There's not a lot of things in life where you know that you're doing good or being told you're doing well, but from an audience perspective, like you feel that. It's kind of weird, so you feel that energy, and especially the applause at the end or anything like that. If you've done a good job, then you start to kind of get that a bit more, and that's kind of that's my heroin in a way, to to have that audience reaction, and it's just the fact of live theatre is it's so erratic, and you don't know what's going to happen at any moment. So it's that kind of, a lot of times when you're filming things, like I've done a lot of filming stuff in the past, and that's always been sort of, you can kind of make mistakes in that, because then you can easily just, well, not easy, but you can kind of go back and just sort of edit it and do it again, and that kind of stuff, and it's a lot of stop and repeating, so it's still fun. I still like doing all that filming and stuff, but the thing with live performances and live theatre is that you have to nail it there and then. It's that kind of trying to nail it and trying to achieve the best that we can. That's what I miss really the most.
What I'm missing the most about theatre is being on stage. I think the whole rehearsal process, you get to meet up with your buddies, and it's just a great laugh.
I think what I'm really missing most is learning lines. It's the actual learning lines to do and being another character. I'm finding that I'm just being me, and I'm pretty boring. I have had troubles with this enforced inactivity. I ache constantly. I'm not going to rehearsals. I was rehearsing up to 4 nights a week. I don't go shopping, which I used to do after rehearsals. And I feel distanced from it, distanced from my life almost at the moment, which is not very nice.
I'm missing everything really, just like everything, like the acting, performing, probably being around people in total, and that is, it's part of being a community, and that's what I miss the most. And it's just awful. Like, this pandemic is rubbish, and it's not done theatre any good. Like, things have started to open, things are like starting to be done, but still the pandemic is closing all theatres, which is weird. I find that, because obviously people are allowed to go to on planes, and they're allowed to go to pubs, they can go to restaurants where they're spending a couple of hours around, surrounded by people, like even on planes in close proximity, but yet the couple of hours that you spend at the theatre you're not allowed to do. So maybe we can just do a theatre on a plane, maybe cut the cockpit off and put some performers on there, maybe do something like that, a way around it.
Miss it all, not having theatre to go to. It doesn't really change life for me that much. with theatre going on and with being in a lot of shows, because I try to do 3 to 4 shows a year, I'm always busy. But there's always something else that I'm not doing instead. So I guess my main 2 things, apart from work, would be football and the theatre. Normally I can't train, I can only play matches because I'm at rehearsals. So because I'm not doing rehearsals at the moment, I'm able to train more. So I'm still busy in the evenings and I'm still doing stuff. So life and an interruption to my life, it hasn't really affected that much. I know some people who it has and they're really missing it. So some theatres have done sort of online readings or competitions or monologues and stuff like that, which I think is great to keep people occupied. But sometimes, because it's not a show and something I'm actually working towards, finding the time to do that for me is quite difficult. So during lockdown, I watched a couple of the National Theatre productions, which were really good. And then, as I say, there's a lot of theatres that have done, local theatres that have done their own little things. So I've been involved in a couple of read-throughs of plays, and I know people who've done that. So a couple of people sent me their scripts to perform, which I just about find time to do. I think some theatres have kind of overcomplicated things. You know, we're here for a bit of fun, and making it competitive or too complicated excludes quite a lot of people. So I think more could have been done by amateur theatres to get people involved or come up with little ideas, even of little skits that you could send back and forward or create. But saying that, it's not an easy solution, so they've done the best they can. I've watched a few things of what people have done, and the only thing I would say, because a lot of them have been monologues about life during lockdown or about life, they can be a little bit samey. It would have been nice to kind of have more scope for people to do things, to go out and do crazy stuff or little stuff, big stuff, whatever it is, and make it a bit more, put a bit more variety into it.
For me, trying to stay involved in the arts whilst in lockdown has been fun. I've been able to write a monologue, direct a monologue. I've been able to perform in virtual choirs with various groups around the nation, and that's been really fun. And in my family as well, we've also participated in a lot of dance classes and acting workshops. So people have been very resourceful, and it's very empowering to see where people have been able to take the arts virtually, and it's definitely been a privilege to be involved with that as well.
When the pandemic first happened, I suppose as publicity, I was trying to think in terms of what we could do to kind of rally people a little bit. For St Ambrose Players, it was something we were founded during the Second World War, so it was always, the idea was kind of like boost people's spirits back then, and I was kind of talking to other members of the publicity team, and we were trying to think of ways that we could try and do something similar but from a virtual point of view. It's really difficult, I think, to do it properly. It takes so much planning, but one of the things that we tried to do, I think, which helped me actually, to be fair, when I was at my most worried, and hopefully I think a lot of other people felt the same, we did songs from home. So we did little lockdown songs, Disney songs, musical songs. Different members took part in it. And that was our big thing that we did kind of at the height of lockdown. I've seen some monologues from different theatres, a lot of local amateur theatres, and they've been brilliant to watch, to be fair. I think it's great when people get involved in that way, and just, particularly for people who sort of are stuck at home, really want to get involved. I think it's been great to just see people act and do what they do best and find a new way of doing it. I think it's really good.
While we've been locked down, I've done some writing, and I've been watching comedy sports, which I rather enjoy. I've done a monologue for one of the drama clubs that I'm with, and I've done a monologue for another person. He wrote that one. For the drama club, I wrote my own. I've got another one in the pipeline, but whether I'll actually do that is another thing. I've watched quite a lot, but I do find that they are depressing. A lot of them seem to be to do with the epidemic or to do with COVID, which is fine, but I'd wish it could have something a little more jovial.
I think the reason why I've not done any virtual theatre myself, not acted in any myself, is there's obviously I enjoy an audience, and that's what I love, and that's why I do it. And it's just not the same. It's sat there doing a monologue. Yes, he's acting, but it's just not the same without that audience feedback.
I don't know how I feel. I think my biggest concern is, as much as personally, of course, I'd love to be back doing what I enjoy. My biggest concern is, when will we get the audiences? When will they be ready to come back? So even if theatres, whether it's professional or amateur, manage to get the social distancing right and everything perfect, whether it's on stage, backstage, or for the audiences, it's going to be when we can make money again at the end of the day. So I think it's going to take time for people to get confident again, going back, and hopefully that'll happen sooner rather than later. But I do think that it's just going to be a question of reading people's attitudes, and also I think actors on stage, certainly from an amateur point of view, they do it because they love it, and there are some people that are really happy to maybe go out and socialise now, and they're ready for that and they're confident, and a lot of people that are going to take a bit longer, and that's absolutely fine in both instances. So I think it's going to be about finding the right balance over the next few months as to when people feel confident and happy, and when it's safe to really go ahead and do what we do best and enjoy it.
I think there's a lot of debate about whether theatres should be up and running now or not. I think my frustration is that I see other venues, other sports, other locations being able to open and we can't. That isn't to say that it's necessarily safe for actors to be interacting or for an audience to come in and get together and see us, but there hasn't been enough support for our industry. There has been some grants starting to go out, and that is helpful to some theatres who haven't already shut. But you look at things like Eat Out to Help Out, and there's massive discounts for people to get back into that industry. If the government was willing to subsidise theatre tickets so that when we did open, we could start bringing in full income and it wouldn't cost as much to audiences, that would be phenomenally beneficial, especially to small local places like the theatres that I work with. So perhaps not that we should be back yet, but that there should be a plan of action, a plan B of action, and that everyone should know that and have that comfort and have that time to plan for it safely.
I do think the issue of being back at the theatre is a very complicated one. Obviously, the guidelines are being set by people, hopefully far more intelligent than me or most people at the theatre, coming from sort of medical backgrounds and having access to all the research. And the guidelines are distance and PPE, which, as much as you might want it to be, isn't always possible during theatre. I went to watch one outdoor performance down in Chester of a Shakespeare, an abridged Shakespeare, and that was really well done. There were times when people came together, but it was always back to back, no touching, and everything else was as distanced as you could get. So there is opportunity to do that, but that was a professional production done outside, where they've got the facilities to kind of keep people separate. In a theatre, I think that's a lot more difficult from a performer's point of view. Yes, we can try as much as we possibly can, but if a show was on, you're going to have spots in the wings, crossing places, where I think it's difficult to keep the distance. But I think my main question would be, are audiences ready? Even if theatres and performers are ready, a lot of audiences tend to be a little older, 60 plus, and they're more vulnerable, more likely to be shielded and more nervous about going out into public spaces. So even if we put on a show and your theatre capacity is 100 people, are you going to get 100, or is it going to be more like 25 or 20, in which case, from a financial point of view, is there any point? Again, I don't know, but I'd err on the side of wait for audiences to be ready before starting anything back up again.
We have to stay 2 meters apart, and we have to wear masks around the buildings and stuff like that, and even in our own classrooms we're going to have to wear masks, which is going to be incredibly difficult when doing any acting scene, no matter what it is. Like, even if you're just having a conversation on stage, it's going to be incredibly weird to have a conversation with somebody and have to be stood 2 meters apart from them. A lot of the time, if you're trying to do an intimate scene or trying to do something that's meant to be a bit more heartfelt, and if you want that closeness with another actor, so it's going to be incredibly difficult to do that. So I think that's really going to start affecting me, especially as a performer as well, because actors feed off each other a lot when we're performing. Especially me, I really like to. I build my characters around other people and how they would react around their characters. So if they're not giving me a good, I'm not blaming them or anything, but if they're not giving a good performance, I kind of feel like it's going to sort of really affect my performance, and I'm not going to perform very well.
I'm just frightened that theatre won't be the same again. I mean, how can you fit so many people into an auditorium with our new guidelines? And how long are these guidelines gonna last? And so when will our normal theatre be back? It's definitely a worry. Personally, I don't think virtual theatre will take over, because that's the whole point of seeing a live performance. You want to see it live. So, but it's been a handy tool since we've been in lockdown. It's been great having, watching people perform. But I can't see. I'm not a fan of virtual theatre, but I can't see it really going any further. I mean, it's not necessary when our theatres open again.
I think often when people think about art, it's this very wishy-washy jazz hands version of life, and I think often we actually need that to continue talking about things massively important to society that mainstream media and politicians want to look away from. For example, we have musicals about LGBTQ plus members of society. We have musicals about depression and suicide. We have musicals about adoption. We have musicals about abandonment. We have musicals about true stories. We have musicals about tragic accidents that changed societies for a while, and really that's what's happening to us now, and probably there will be plays and musicals about this one day too. But that allows hundreds and hundreds of people to, in comfort, find something that relates to them and find a talking point for family and friends. And I think that is so essential, especially now that we're seeing in our news feeds so many things that people in power don't want to talk about, and here we are in a safe environment saying we are going to talk about it.
One thing that's really concerning me at my age is that I've been doing this sort of thing, I'm drama, whatever you want to call it, for years, ever since. And I'm most concerned that I'm not going to be able to get back to it. I've found while I've been in lockdown, and as I said, this enforced, it just worries me that I'll never walk on stage again.
I think it's quite shocking to see the responses that we're getting from leadership nationally regarding the arts. Time and time again, it's being referred to as an important hobby, as a pastime, as, creativity is important and it's essential to society, but it's being viewed as a hobby. And I think, if anything, this pandemic should have proven that it's essential. We market our country as the birthplace of Shakespeare, and we have the Beatles and all these things. All these people are creative and they bring so much to tourism. But beyond that, we wouldn't have survived this pandemic without Netflix, without books, without pieces of art to create, to buy, to put up. I think it's ridiculous that you can turn your face away from what's going on when you see that it's the only comfort people have had at this time. And I think, if anything, that should be a massive cry for more funding, for more importance in the education system. Arts and education is already massively underfunded and not supported and not something that people see as academic. And that's ridiculous when you look at how it has literally kept people going right now. And yes, this is unprecedented, but this is essential to life regardless of what's happening in society.